Hello everyone, back for another Car Talks. In this Car Talk, I'd like to talk about infrastructure as code, or what some people call configuration as code. Now this is a term that's been fairly recent in the past few years, based on the whole DevOps concepts and configuration management tools and that sort of thing. And it's a concept that I'm working with now in my full-time position. So to give you an idea what infrastructure as code is, I'm going to use it in the terms of automation and lots of different DevOps principles. So whenever you build an infrastructure, let's just say you're going to build a server. We'll just keep it simple. A simple server with just a virtual machine. And on this virtual machine, maybe you want to install a few Windows features. So you want to get IIS installed. Perhaps you want to install a website, a couple app pools, put on a few files on there, what have you. If when you're automating this, say that you're automating this thing with some kind of script, a PowerShell script. So you start at the top and you call, new VM, and as soon as your virtual machine is created, then you say, install Windows features, and after that's created, then you say, install website, new IIS website, or new IIS app pool, or whatever. It's very iterative. You start at the top, the topmost, and you follow it all the way down, and then you just get all that done, which then at the end creates a server, then the configuration that you want. The problem with that is first of all, it's iterative. Like if you change, let's just say that you want to create a server and that server name is, foo. Let's say that you say new server, you have a new server.ps1 script and you let it run, and the foo server is already out there. It's already created. So your whole script bombs out and stops. Now, if you have a bunch of if-then statements, you could go the step further and say, okay, first check and see if the server name is there. If foo exists, then skip that part and do the next one. If this website with this name exists, then skip that one and go to the next part. So you would have a PowerShell script that has a bunch of check sets, test set, or however you want to say there. So you'll have you have to manually check for this stuff first and then set it, check it. It will make your script a lot larger. Now, in addition to that, what if you want to make a change? Well, you as the PowerShell guru that you are, will go in and just say, well, I need to make a change to, the website name or some kind of website attribute or property. You have to go into the code, into the PS1 specifically, and make the change. It's not very intuitive to a layperson, a developer that needs the server, or another user or something that doesn't know about PowerShell. You don't want to make it extremely difficult for them. You have to say, well, go to line 70 and go to this character and change this regular expression. That's not feasible. So those are the sort of the problems that you're going to get into if you kind of take the iterative approach in a PowerShell script, or just when provisioning a server and infrastructure. If you go with the infrastructure as code process, you define the entire server configuration all in one external document. I mean, that could be a JSON file, that could be XML, that could be a PowerShell PSD1 file, that could be anything you want. We're just talking generics here. That structure is all built out in a single file. So you would have a virtual machines node, and then underneath the virtual machines you would have name, size, disk size, and all that stuff. And then underneath there, maybe you'd have IIS service or web service. Under that, you would say Windows features. I want this. And app pools, you would just specifically put, or a website, you put website attributes, name, location, path, that sort of thing. You have objects and properties, sort of objects and properties in that kind of manifest that you're setting up. So everything is laid out in a single manifest. Number one, it's great to get all that stuff out into a file. You can just easily look at, okay, what does this server consist of? And like everything is in there in a proper, structured hierarchy. Also, in addition to that, it's a lot easier to read. Maybe a YAML file or JSON or something like that. That's human readable. You don't have to necessarily change the code to make things happen. In addition, if you write your code right, or if you use a concept for like DSC or Ansible or Chef Puppet, one of those configuration management tools, or if you just decide to kind of write your own solution, you can write the code that you can add things as you go along. So let's say that you have a websites category. First of all, you have websites in your configuration, and then you have an array in JSON or wherever. And you build up the option to put in multiple websites. In your code, you don't just look at one website. You have a for each loop, or use DSC or something like this, where it'll just go say, oh, fine, if you want to add a new website, just add another node right there in the configuration document. And then it will just, whenever the server is provisioned, it will just look at this configuration document and then just create everything else. Same thing with remove. If one's not in there, it can remove it. There's a lot of different options that you have, talking in general terms here. But so not only that, it's idempotent too. Idempotent is a kind of a crazy term that is kind of a fancy term that a lot of people use as a mathematical term. That in a roundabout way, it essentially means you can hit new server or run new server as many times as you possibly want. It will run every single time. It's not going to error out if something is in there, but it's going to have the smarts to read that before it actually does any kind of setting of any means. So like it automates the whole if-then process and all that stuff. All that stuff is hidden behind the scenes, and you don't need to worry about it. The only thing you need to worry about is maintaining a central configuration document of some kind, a central configuration manifest that provides all the instructions which the code then can understand and read. So in a nutshell, I mean, that's kind of how infrastructure as code exists. There's a lot of different tools, like I said, like DSC, Puppet, Chef, Ansible. You can roll your own, but it's mostly the core concept of infrastructure as code or configuration as code is just defining what it is, what an application is, what an environment is, what a server is, all of the various components and the attributes of that, all defined in a single document. Once you have that single document and all those attributes defined properly, then you have another piece, a separate piece of code that then reads all those, intelligently reads all those, and says, okay, is this attribute set? No, then set it. If this attribute is not set, then don't set it. You know, it goes through. It does a lot of those gets, tests and sets, tests and sets to make sure that the server is how you want it. You can run a new server anytime you want. It's not going to actually create a new server. It'll just follow the instructions that are set forth in the configuration document. And then once you have all of that kind of foundational system set up, that really can lead into a lot of different areas like build pipelines, acceptance test, automation. If you have everything built out in a single document, you know exactly how it needs to be. So you can just set your test to that and say, well, just run my acceptance tests against my configuration document rather than having to figure out and decipher all my code that I created. So if you're in on a DevOps team, or you're in a build and release engineering team, if you're just in charge of automating infrastructure in general, I highly recommend looking at infrastructure as code or configuration as code as just a concept, and just really grokking what it means to do that. It's kind of a mindset shift. It's a different way of thinking about provisioning, but once you kind of get it and that light bulb goes off, then your whole process of infrastructure provisioning and configuration management is going to be a lot easier in the future.